Hello and welcome back to Red Brick Recap. I'm once again joined by my co-host Ted. I'm back home. I'm back in my home set, back home in the home set. Got all my stuff back to the way it was. I'm not relying on a temporary setup like I had at home. So feels good to be back. Ted, how are we doing?
I'm still in my temporary setup. I'm actually in a new location today. I'm in my kitchen instead of my bedroom. Been doing some grad school work
Ooh.
all week, reading textbooks. So I decided might as well just record out here because no one's home right now. So
Are you taking a winter class?
no, this is it's a grad course for a spring class. She's already assigned some work. So
Wow. All right. Getting on it early.
yeah,
But hey, I guess that's the grad school life.
oh
Um,
yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here just grinding job applications. I think I'm sending out like 15 a day at this point. It's a grind. But we're here to talk about Miami sports. We're here. It's been a busy week for Miami, a little quieter than we've had in past weeks, but we still have, I think, 6 games to talk about between our winter sports. We'll start with hockey. We're still bad. It's not much has changed there. 0-2 weekend, neither loss was particularly close. Um, there were some flashes of stuff, but nah, just not another. It's another just not a great weekend for Miami hockey.
Yeah, I think you summed it up best. It's going to be one of those seasons. It's just going to be a tough year, to say the least. Um, I mean, yeah, there's there's really not much more to say. It's there, like you said, there were some flashes. The flashes really haven't been promising. Well, they're flashes, so they have been promising, but they haven't been as much as I think we've wanted them to be. But at one point, Bruno Rivera's had the save of the night against Denver. He had a really nice kind of like extension. Um, Almost like contorting his body. I think he was like really slow to get up. They like almost stopped the game to like get him out of the game. But it was kind of one of those things that you see in the NHL where he's on the left post and then all of a sudden he stretches all the way over to the right post to snag a save. So some really incredible stuff by him. But of course, I mean 6'2", 4'1". I mean, it's still tough in the defense department. But yeah, this is kind of we'll wait and see till next year to really assess the team.
Yeah, and like there are some decent like stats, like overall. Like Johnny Waldron's been good. He's got 14 points in 18 games. It's not horrific. It's the best on the team by a pretty large margin. Chipani and Ambrosio both are sitting at 12 and 20. It's a start. It's again. I wrote it in the notes. They remind me a lot of my favorite hockey team. Hence why I'm wearing this hat, the Chicago Blackhawks, where we're in the early stages of the rebuild. We're trying to, for lack of a better term, we're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And right now, there are pieces that are sticking. There are guys that I think will be part of this team down the line. I think Noreen's done an excellent job of revamping through recruiting because I think next year's class is supposed to be pretty good. I don't follow the junior circuit as much as I follow like NHL or college hockey, and I don't follow them very much either. So it's a pretty low bar, but it seems like we're kind of setting the foundations to be better in the future, which is all you can ask for a coach in season one. And I feel like that's kind of what we've been talking about every time we talk about Miami hockey is that this is always going to be a transition year. There are still pieces from the old roster that are still around. And I think once Noreen gets his guys on the team after a couple of years, then I think this is a completely different Miami team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat as you. I don't really follow the junior circuit too much, but from what I've seen just on Twitter and other spaces like that, like people are really high on this Miami hockey class, and like you said, there is the familiarity with the USHL and Coach Noreen. Most of his guys are from the USHL, and again, he's inheriting this year. Remember, he's inheriting a roster that isn't his. There was still one more year of Bergeron, and I'm sure a lot of these players thought Bergeron was coming back. Then he gets let go. Noreen takes over. Some transfer, some stay. So it's a really weird smorgasbord of players. It reminds me of Travis Steele's first year at Miami when he had, and even Coach Box's first year at Miami. You know, both of those guys inherited rosters that were half of guys that they or half of players that they wanted and half players that stayed on. And so it's a smorgasbord year. So it's kind of hard to assess where the team really stands at, but it's going to be, you know, I don't think these guys come in next year and immediately turn around the program, but I think it's gonna be kind of similar to like, I don't know, maybe my favorite hockey team, the San Jose Sharks, where it's like, okay, you get a couple of pieces, and then as they start to develop, they'll be really good. Like right now, Sharks, they stink. It's kind of like Miami hockey. They have some really good young players, but they stink, right?
Yeah.
But, but we're not expecting them. You're not expecting them to come in and immediately win the Stanley Cup or win, the NCHC. It's going to be a couple of years. But when these guys are sophomores, juniors, seniors, that's when we should really expect to have a really strong Miami hockey team.
Yeah, I mean, the future is brighter than it was. Obviously, the only way was up from where we were last season. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like, there's pieces, there's stuff that can be exciting. Like, I think the goaltending this year has been pretty okay. Obviously, the points don't look great, but we're playing some of the best hockey teams in college hockey week in and week out. So I think the goaltending is probably the strong point right now. Quick tidbit about the NCHC real quick, as I'm sitting here doing a little bit of research. The Blackhawks have 2 guys in the top 10 in scoring in the NCHC, with Aiden Thompson in Denver and Sasha Boiver of North Dakota. Both of those guys were drafted by the Hawks and are doing pretty well in the NCHC. So hopefully we'll see those guys at the United Center within the next couple of years, at least for me. I'm pretty sick and tired of watching the Hawks get pumped by 5 goals every time I go to watch a game. So hopefully that changes, and hopefully Miami hockey gets back on track too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be, like you said, it's gonna be one of those years. It's gonna be, we're gonna throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. Hopefully something sticks,
Yeah.
but we will see. So it's kind of just a shrug. It's just, all right. What can we do? But yeah, I mean that's kind of all we got for hockey. It's been a tough season. It's going to continue to be tough. Like we said, we don't predict another win until sometime in late January, early February, or February. But even then, we're being a little optimistic. So tough season, but
Well,
it is
yeah,
what it is.
let's change gears and talk about some teams that are doing pretty well. Both women's basketball and men's basketball for Miami off to a really strong start to their campaigns, especially in MAC play. We'll start with women's basketball. They've had 2 games in the last week since we last recorded. The first game of a doubleheader that I attended on Saturday, with a win over Bowling Green, 78-63. Maya Chandler was the star. Probably her best game of the season, points-wise, or definitely points-wise, but all around, like, really solid performance. 25 points, 8 for 9 from 3 from the field, 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. That's as much as you can ask for. And even if it's not Miami's number one option on a given night, it's good to see that there are players that can step up when Angelina Gonzalez or Amber Treader doesn't have their A game on a night like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maya Chandler was somebody that we talked about coming in and bringing veteran leadership to this team, which is something that they kind of needed, especially, and again, it's something against the team. It's just that they're a young team, right? Like, if you look at their roster, Treader's only a sophomore. She may be a junior now, but I think she was a sophomore or freshman last year. Actually, let me confirm this so I'm not speaking out of my, she's a sophomore this year. Okay, that's what I thought. So, like, Treader's a sophomore. Tamar Singer is a freshman. Ilse DeVries is a freshman. Like Lucretia Edwards, I think she's like a redshirt sophomore. Like these were players. They're young. Noria Horho, she's also a sophomore. Like this is a really, really young team. So to have somebody like Maya Chandler, who is a graduate student, she's been around the block a couple times. She's played at Loyola Chicago. She played at SMU, which, I mean, shout out SMU, ACC over there. But she brings a certain veteran leadership to this squad that they desperately needed, and we saw that against Bowling Green, right? It wasn't necessarily. I mean, well, it was good games from Treader and Gonzalez. They both had 17 points, but Chandler was able to step up, and she got. I remember seeing from your tweets, like she got scoring early and often. She was like almost perfect for the majority of the game, correct?
She was perfect until like the end of the third quarter.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
So, I mean, and to top it off, she had 3 rebounds and 2 assists. She was perfect from behind the arc. She only missed 1 shot. She was perfect from the free throw line. That is the veteran leadership that you need for a really, really young team. And somebody like Tamara Singer is going to get a lot of good tips and pointers from Maya Chandler. So
Yeah.
really good third game in the MAC for them.
Speaking of Tamar Singer, both Coach Box and Chandler after the game said that like having her back in the lineup was crucial. It was a complete game changer for them because her transition game is so good. She pushes the pace, she makes them play fast. And I think we saw that in the box score and just from watching the game. Like you look at the Central Michigan game we talked about where it was 47-46. Now a week later they're scoring 78. Like that is a 30-point swing that I'm not going to say it's all because of Singer being back, but it definitely helped. When you're pushing the pace, you're getting more possessions, you're getting more opportunities to score. And I think we saw that on Saturday, then how important she is to Miami's offense, especially in transition.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right there. I mean, they scored 46 and then, like you said, 32-point swing. Like, I mean, Tamara Singer's impact, like, because she most times, like, she'll grab a board and then she'll go. Or she'll get a little, like, an outlet pass from somebody else who grabs a board and she'll go. And she's gone in the blink of an eye. And it opens up that offense so much more when you have somebody who's as electrically fast as her, because she gets up and down the floor in, God, it's got to be like 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Like she moves so quickly and so fast that you're like, how did you get from point A to point B without anybody stopping you? So she just, I mean, Chandler and Box said it best. Like she just provides another level to this offense that you don't necessarily always see with the RedHawks, and her development is going to be crucial moving forward when you have players like Treader and DeVries who are still young, and even Angelina Gonzalez, I believe she's a redshirt sophomore. Like these are all going to be players that are going to be playing together for the next hopefully the next 2-3 years. And if they can all like mesh and figure out like, okay, we're really good in transition, they're going to have some really, really high scoring affairs.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about like how last season was not awesome, and this season was kind of like I don't want to say prove it year, but like it was, as long as there was progress and there was clear, a step up from last season, I think we would call the season a success. I would say right now, I think they're ahead of schedule because they look a lot better than I thought they were going to look, frankly, coming into the season. I mean, at least since MAC play started, they looked pretty good, and it's back-to-back wins. We'll get into the Northern Illinois win here in a second, but 3-2 in the conference, and you're going to Buffalo and Akron and Kent State. Those are games that Miami at least should be competitive in. Obviously, I'm thinking they will probably win. But we talked about Buffalo. That's one of the best teams in the conference. So if that game's the real test. So I'm looking forward to that game on Saturday. If I can watch it, I'll live tweet it, but I don't know my schedule yet. It's a little too far out for me to tell. But yeah, I think the next big test will be that Buffalo game because I think right now I'm not going to say contenders for the MAC title, but I think they're definitely still in play. Like they're still a team to watch. Or I think the NFL graphic says in the hunt. I think we'll go with that. But yeah, I think that Buffalo game will be a really good barometer to see what kind of level this Miami team is going to play at the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Buffalo is 14-2. They're 8-1 at home, 6-1 on the road. But they're only 3-2 in the conference, which is honestly kind of interesting. But I mean, I guess looking at some of the quality of schools that they've played, probably not like your top tier opponents. But they lost to Kent State and they've lost to Ball State, and they've beat Central Michigan, Bowling Green, and they just killed Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
But needless to say, you're right. This is going to be the barometer game for Miami. How close they are and how competitive they are in this game, I think will determine how we should feel about them for the rest of the season. And the thing that I am really interested in is who gets the Chelia Watson matchup. We talked about Chelia Watson at length in the last few podcasts when we've talked about this, but she is far and away the best player on Buffalo's team. Like she's averaging 33 minutes a game. I'm trying to get her points per game, but they don't have her points per game
I think she had 23 last year.
She's averaging right here. She's averaging 20 this year, which is probably which seems a little lower than you'd expect, but she's still, far and away the best player on this team. And yeah, I guess who gets that matchup? Is it going to be somebody like Singer who's fast and can cover her on the perimeter? Is it going to be Gonzalez, who has come into the lineup and just like taken over essentially?
Yeah, I think right now if I'm Coach Box, I'm putting Singer on it for now. Also, Singer is kind of coming back from injury, so maybe not. Maybe you do go with Gonzalez, but height wise, they match up pretty well. Singer's 5'4", Watson's 5'8". It's not obviously Watson's got the advantage there, but it's close in height difference. But Watson's coming off 4 straight 20-point games. So, I mean, it might be a situation where you almost soft double teamer the entire game and have a help off a screen, and then you're kind of forcing her into a trap almost. But yeah, I think that's the key matchup, and whoever gets that matchup is going to have their hands full for 40 minutes or yeah. But yeah, I think if they play like they did in the Northern Illinois win, they're going to at least compete. They're going to be in the game the entire way, because we talked whole season how turnovers is the kind of the Achilles heel of this team. They only had 12 against NIU. Obviously, you're hoping to get that to under 10, but anything under 20 at this point is probably a success for this Miami team. I think they had 18 in the Bowling Green game. So there's a trend of the turnovers going down, which I think will continue as Miami continues to play with this group more and more and kind of establish their style of play. And they forced 23 on the other end and got 31 points off turnovers at the other end. Like if they are able to create those extra possessions, they're going to set themselves up to be in that game against Buffalo.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But no, that you're right. The Northern Illinois game was probably one of the better games that I think we've seen out of this Miami squad so far. And it's still a very young MAC season, right? And I'm excited to see, how they build off of this and how they continue to grow, because the hope is that, they just continue to get better and better and better and better. And I mean, they're sitting 6th in the conference right now, and again, it's still early in the season, but they're sitting 6th in the conference. Considering, kind of where they were last year, that's great for them. And I can't remember I don't think they made the MAC tournament last year. They did. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. They did not make the MAC tournament last year. They were not very good. But again, it was Fox's first year. It was the smorgasbord of players. So they're sitting sixth in the conference right now, which is a huge, huge improvement. And they've played, one less game than most of the teams there, and they get to play Buffalo next. Like, again, it's a big test, but I mean, overall, they've looked pretty good. They have a 10.5 margin between their offense and their defense of ratings, I believe, or points scored per game. I think it is. Like, they're scoring almost 67 points a game, and they're only giving up 55.
Yep.
That's huge, and they have the top ranked defense in the league in the MAC right now. Top ranked defense. They're only giving up 55 points a game. Like, yeah, I mean, where did that come from?
That's obviously, if the defense plays like that every game, they're going to be in with a shot to win every game. It's going to come down to the offense and protecting the ball and not having 20 turnovers and, taking advantage of the possessions where you do get the extra turnovers. The next 4 games for Miami are all against 3-2 opponents. So this is going to be a tough stretch for Miami. They go to Buffalo, who are obviously 14-2, and we talked about Watson, the matchup nightmare that she brings. Then I think it's Toledo, Kent State, and Akron. I'm not sure if that's the exact order, but I know that's the next 3. It's Akron, Kent State, and then Toledo. But that's going to be – I think these 4 games decide what kind of season Miami's going to have. If they're able to come out of that stretch 4-0, 3-1, we're looking at a team that can probably squeeze into the top 3 in the MAC. Even if you go 2-2, you're in the hunt for MAC tournament berth. You go 1-3, 0-4, you're starting to think, okay, well – it's still better than it was last year, but maybe you're not competing for a MAC regular season title yet, but there's a foundation to build on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, going 2-2 in these next couple of stretches, that's probably where you'd expect the team to be. That's exactly where you want to sit. Even 1-3, you're kind of like, all right, you can rebound against some of the lower tier opponents, because they haven't played a ton of lower tier opponents quite yet. A storyline I want to watch for this game is Miami leads the MAC in team 3-point percentage. They're shooting 36% as a team. Buffalo only shoots about 30% as a team. However, Buffalo opponents have been held to 25% from behind the arc when they play Buffalo, as opposed to Miami letting up 34% of their threes. So that is something I want to watch, because clearly Miami gets a ton of offense from that 3-point line.
Mhm.
But if Buffalo is really stingy with that, how does that affect the offense, and where do they go from there?
I think it's one of those things where it's the same thing we talk about with the men's team, where it's like it's the live and die by the 3-pointer, which the men's team did a lot last season and less so this season. But if that 3-point shot is taken away, what's the adjustment on offense? Like, who do you go to try and get something going on the interior? Is it like a Katie Richardson reliance in the post? Is it Amber Treader moving her from the 3-point line back into the post? Who's the I'm going to say like catalyst for offense in and around the rim as opposed to at the 3-point line? And I'm not really sure we've seen that yet. I'd have to go back and watch some more film, but I'm not sure we've seen a game this season where the women's team has been forced to adjust after not being able to get it going from the 3-point line.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I don't know how many games they've had to like adjust, but still an interesting tidbit to watch. And I mean, look, it'll be fun. It's two of the top 3 scorers in the MAC. Chelia Watson leads the MAC at 20 a game, and then Angelina Gonzalez has 17 a game, and she's third in the MAC right now. So those are 2 really high-powered offenses, 2 really high-power scoring teams. And then you even get a couple, some more like top 20 players. Kristen Lewis-Williams, she's averaging 13 a game for Buffalo. That ranks her at 14th. And then Amber Treader's averaging about 11, which puts her at 19. So that's 4 top 20 scorers in the MAC, 2 top 3 scorers. I mean, it could be a bloodbath, just even an absolute shootout.
Yeah, it could be a shootout. I also want to answer my own question here. Miami is 3-1 when they shoot under 30% from the 3-point line. So they have proven that they can score and get wins in other ways. So that's on me. I don't know ball. But yeah, so they've proven they can make the adjustment. So even if the 3-point line is taken away, I think based on the stats, they have found other ways to score and have found other ways to generate offense. So granted, 2 of these, one of the wins is against Hiram, so I'm not really sure if I'm going to throw that one in there. But even against Western Michigan, they shot 29% and won by 6. Against Dayton, they shot 25% and won by 17. So there are other ways this team can score. I do think the 3-point line would definitely help if they can get that going against Buffalo, especially when you have such a high output scorer in Watson on the other side. So I think it's definitely a storyline to watch, but I do think that there are paths to victory outside of relying on the 3 for Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny that both teams have a pretty hard reliance on the 3-point shot, but we've seen from both squads that they're able to figure it out when they need to.
Yeah. Anything else about the women's team before we jump into the 2 men's games this week?
I mean, that 2 really good road wins, or I guess Bowling Green was at home, but 2 really good wins for the women's basketball team. Really kind of solidifying themselves as like a middle of the table team, to use some English Premier League terms. Even though my Tottenham Hotspurs lost your Arsenal, whatever, the other day, I don't care about that.
I was gonna wear my jersey just to annoy you, but I figured.
Oh, thank you. So much fun. Anyways. But yeah, they're middle of the pack, middle of the table. Definitely ahead of schedule considering last year. I think they were at the bottom of the MAC. So really encouraging signs from this team.
Yeah, agreed. I think that Coach Bach's done a great job in a short time to get this team kind of back into contention in the MAC. And I think that these next 4 games are going to be a good barometer to see what kind of level they're at in comparison to the rest of the MAC the rest of the season. But without further ado, let's jump into one of the hottest offensive teams in the country. And I can't believe I'm saying that, talking about the Miami Redhawks men's basketball team. I think I did the math after the what's it called, the Western Michigan game. Since like the new year, I think, or just before the new year, Miami's averaging close to 100 points a game, which even if you take out the Defiance game, they're averaging, I think, just under 91.
Wow.
Which would be, I think, if not number 1, number 2 in the country. Because last I looked, I think Alabama was at 91 points per game, and Miami would be number 2 at 90.8. So again, where did this come from? This was not I asked Coach Steele about it in the press conference, and I asked him, like, we talked before the season about this team's going to be good offensively. You've added a ton of scorers. You've added a ton of high volume shooters. You knew your offense was going to be good. Did you think it was going to be this good? And he like laughed at me. I was like, yeah, I did. Like, I saw this coming. This team was built to score. And I think we've seen it in the last 2 games where even against, I'll start with the Western Michigan game. Cam Kraft had 23 on 9 for 13 from shooting. That's about the best you can ask for out of him on a given night. If he's giving you that every night, Miami's going to win a lot of games. Peter Suter added 16 on 66% shooting. Byers added 14. Reese Potter added 14. Both of those guys, I think they went 50% from the floor combined. As a team, Miami shot 54% and 43% from behind the arc. They do that like for the rest of the season, they're going to be the team to beat, frankly. Like this right now, they're playing the best basketball I've seen a Miami team play in my time here, and it's not particularly close. And it's been a really, really fun stretch to watch. And I think people are starting to realize, like, oh, there might be something here. This might be a team that you really have to keep an eye on the rest of the way.
Absolutely. Miami ranks top 25 in scoring offenses.
Yeah.
Alabama's number 1 at 89.5. Miami is 23 spots behind them at number 24 at 83.6 points per game. Have we ever seen a Miami basketball team rank, let alone top 25, rank in the top 50 of scoring offenses? I don't think we have. And I mean, then the next best MAC team is Akron, 10 spots below them at 82.2. Like you said, there's something there. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because, again, we have played like the bottom, we've played like the bottom 4 teams in the MAC. But that doesn't change the fact that this is the first time since 2005, 2006 that Miami has gone 4-0 to open MAC play, which is pretty nice statistic. But I mean, Miami's offense ranks better than the likes of like UConn. UConn's at number 40, Texas 45. Baylor, they're not necessarily known for their offense, or more known for their defense, but they're at 48, right? Like, I mean, how? Just how?
Well, I'm looking at. I got a little curious. I'm looking at last season. Last season they averaged 70 points per game, and averaged 70 points allowed per game. This year it's a 13-point swing. And it's pretty clear to see where the points are coming from. It's from these new faces. I'm honestly blown away. A little bit of further research proved that Miami has not scored this many points per game since 1953.
Whew.
This is the highest scoring Miami team in the history of the Miami RedHawks program, which started in 1905, according to Basketball Reference.
50s, was that Wayne Embry era?
I believe
a little far.
Let me double check that, but I believe that was the Embry year.
Miami is top 200 in defense, by the way. So
it is not. I'm trying to find. I don't think they have the leading scorers here. Yeah, they're top. I think they're 6th in 3-point percentage too, which is insane. Dick Walls led the team with 21.2 points per game and 14.5 rebounds per game. Holy cow!
It was 1953 was the year before Wayne Embry got there. He played from 54 to 58. Yeah,
Dick Walls was the leader of that team. He had 20 and 14. He was a 6'7" center, so it shows how much the times have changed. He went on to play for the Rochester Royals in the NBA, where he averaged 16 points a game. That'll play.
Hey, I mean, Wayne Embry was, 6'8", 6'9" center, and then he played he also played for he did. Okay, this could bug me. I'm pretty sure he played for Rochester as well at some point.
He played for the St. Louis Hawks.
Wayne Embry?
Yes. Or at least that's where he was drafted to.
No, he played for the Cincinnati Royals, which were the Rochester Royals, because they became the Sacramento Kings.
Interesting.
Yeah. So according to Basketball Reference, his nicknames are Goose Embry, and the Wall. I like that. That's hard.
Oh.
But yeah, played for the Cincinnati Royals, which it was like their second year becoming Cincinnati. They were Rochester like 2 years prior to that. I don't think they overlapped though. It does not look like they overlapped.
He finished 9th in MVP voting in 1964.
Dude, he was good. Like people don't realize just how good how good Wayne Embry was. Like I mean, first of all, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
5-time All-Star. He won an NBA championship with the Celtics in 67, 68. He won a championship with Celtics 68. He retires, right? And then he goes on to win 2 more championships. He was the first black general manager in the NBA. He was crucial in getting Oscar Robertson to come from what is now the Sacramento Kings to the Milwaukee Bucks to team up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and win that championship in 71. So he was the first black GM in the NBA, first black GM to win a championship. And then he was an advisor for the 2019 Raptors.
Oh, yeah.
So
he's pretty good.
He's got 3
3 rings.
Yeah, he's got 3 rings, and his numbers retired in Miami. He's got a statue of Miami.
I mean, I think we have more statues on the way too. I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I don't think he's going to be alone in the statue department.
I don't think so either.
Let's get back to the current team. This team's kind of been blowing me away. I mean, we've talked at length about the scoring output that Kraft gives you. Your guy, who you put in the notes, has been on fire the last couple of games. I think he's got double-digit scoring outputs in 3 of his last 4. And, I mean, he's been solid. You want to jump in and talk about the guy you're putting all your stock into?
I'll do that in just a half second. Cam Kraft, even though he scored 3 points in the last game against Northern Illinois, I think he was leading the MAC at that point, or very close to leading the MAC. He's now 4th in the MAC. He's only taken 6 free throws on the year.
Well, he hasn't gone to the rim a ton. It's been a lot of like the 3-point, like kind of the long 2. He went to the rim a lot against Ball State and didn't get a ton of calls.
Yeah, but like I mean, you want to look at the other scorers in the area. AJ Clayton from Ohio, 32 free throws. Marcus Johnson from Bowling Green. Speaking of Marcus Johnson, he's the big point guard. Mm-hmm. He's got 40 free throws. Ball State's Jamari Hill, he's got 77. And then like Quentin Jones and Ryan Sable, Northern Illinois Buffalo, like who are also averaging 16.1, 55 and 52 respectively. And then there's just Cam Kraft with 6. Like this tells you the mantra of this team. It's we don't get to the line, but we shoot the crap out of the ball. But the guy that you were alluding to, the redshirt freshman from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, Brant Byers, give me all of this kid's stock. I mean, when we previewed the basketball team early this season, the main freshman we were talking about was Luke Skaljek, and deservedly so to Luke Skaljek. He's been a really solid bench piece, and he's going to be a stud in the coming years. But we kind of overshadowed Brant Byers a little bit, and we even undersold him in the first couple of games. We were like, the shooting form is there, the scoring will come. He looks a little lost on the defensive end. That narrative he has completely changed, especially in those last couple of games. Defensively, he has been a menace. I don't know if you watched like late in the game the other night, but there was a play where Northern Illinois is like driving and swinging, and they get a guy wide open in the corner, and Byers is probably like close to like the low block or something like that. He takes one step, jumps for the ball, like nearly swats it out of bounds, but he like blocked it. It comes straight down. He grabs it, does like a wide receiver toe tap, and like chucks it off of the Northern Illinois player, and it's like Miami ball. Like, I mean, we'll talk about we've talked about his scoring. We'll talk about his shooting in a second, but he's been otherworldly defensively. He has kicked it into gear, and again, like, buy me all of this guy's stock. Like, I mean, he is becoming an invaluable rotation piece. And the other day, I think it was against Western Michigan, he was 6 of 6, I want to say. No, that wasn't the Western Michigan game.
6.
Buffalo game, yeah. He was 6 of 6. But in the Western Michigan game, he was 3 of 6 from behind the arc. He had 14 points, 3 rebounds. Like, I mean, the kid is doing it all off the bench, and he's only a redshirt freshman. And that is just huge for this team, because like they need as much. I mean, they haven't had this bountiful of depth in, oh my gosh, in so long. Like, to be able to play a 9-man rotation in the MAC is huge.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it at length that my probably one fear for this team is what happens when the bench goes cold. And now we're looking at having four guys who are legitimate threats to score the basketball at a high level. And Byers, Ipsaro's shown that he can do it if you give him a night where he gets looks. Skaljak, when he comes back from injury, he's missed the last couple of games with I think it was like a soft injury. It's not a long-term thing as far as I was told. And I'm blanking on the other two. Obviously Byers and Potter, like those guys I think they both had 14 against Western Michigan. So like these are guys who can score the basketball, and that's something that Miami really hasn't had in previous years. Like the guys who've come off the bench have been kind of more like 4 to 5 point guys, get to the line, make a couple layups here and there. These guys can genuinely all create their own offense, and they work so well together on the floor that like I talked about it probably a month ago that looked like there were times where they really couldn't find offensive rhythm when the starters weren't out there, when you didn't have a guy like Suter or Kraft. That has completely changed now. Miami's completely confident going to Skaljak, Byers, and Ipsaro to score the basketball with Potter. Potter is, in my opinion, an elite passer. I was kind of surprised by how well he's able to run the offense from the high post. He sits up there and post up a defender, and there'll be a backdoor cut, and he finds it every time. 95% of the time, he finds the open man cutting to the rim for an easy look. That has completely changed the way that teams have to guard Miami, because if they try and push up to the 3-point line, the backdoor cut's wide open. So that transformation has been a huge part of why Miami's been so lethal scoring the basketball this season.
It's such a luxury to have somebody like Potter who's able to sit at that high block and like just go to work. Whether it's, he really is just such he's got a knack for passing. Like he must have been a point guard in his past life, because he knows he's got such a good feel for like where players are coming from. And it's been a complete like change from last year. Like last year, I feel like he was kind of forcing some things, maybe missing a pass here or there. But now it's like he just sits there and goes, hum, 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 like every backdoor cut he hits. But then again, it's exactly like you said. If they press up on him, he'll find the backdoor cutter. If they give him space, he's versatile enough to hit a jumper from the elbow or hit a jumper from behind the arc. And it's a really fun dynamic to watch. I predicted it earlier in the year, this like fire and ice type of game that like him and Antoine Woolfolk have together. Because it's like, Woolfolk, he's the big body bruiser. He's got 8 boards. This is, I think you said it was like the 8th time he's reached it this season or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He had 8 boards against Northern Illinois. And he had 12 and 8, and probably one of his most efficient games. That's with 6 makes on 8 attempts. Like, he's gonna go low. He's gonna do the dirty work, and then it's like, all right, maybe your starting center has 2 or 3 fouls because Woolfolk is putting them in the paint. All of a sudden, here comes 7'1" Reese Potter. Your backup center's got to guard him, and Potter's just gonna make him look silly, whether it's taking a shot over like in his face, in his grill, or putting the ball on a dime to whoever. And again, oh my gosh, I could just gush about this team because it just seems like there's something in the water here.
It is really fun to watch this team. Like in past years, like Miami's been, let's say, I don't want to say boring, but like some of the offensive patterns were dull and like the shots weren't falling. This team, the offensive patterns we're seeing are so clean and so fun to watch that it's like really invigorated. I think it's bringing people back to Millette. The crowds during this time last season were small, to say the least. I think there was a game I was at where there were 15 people in the crowd. This time, like on Saturday, the place was, it's obviously not full. It's Millette. The place is ginormous, and we'll get to that in a second. But, it was probably a good 2,000-3,000 people there, which for a Saturday game when the students are not here is pretty darn good. Granted, it was a doubleheader, so you had audiences for both games, but that's still really darn good for Miami, especially at this point in the season. But yes, Miami's been good, but before we can get too excited, they do have to play a gauntlet in the next couple of weeks. Saturday, they go to Kent State. That was the preseason number 1 in the MAC. Bowling Green on next. Was it Kent State?
I think it was Akron.
It was Ohio. I'm wrong. Kent State was 3rd. So Kent State number 3 predicted in the MAC preseason. Bowling Green 5. Akron 2, and then Ohio, who was picked 1 to start off February. Obviously, you throw in Eastern Michigan in there too, hasn't had the best season. But those are 4 games in the next 2 weeks that are going to be crucial to Miami's season.
Yeah, gauntlet is definitely the way that like you would describe this. And we kind of alluded to it earlier. We said that they played like the bottom kind of 4 or 5 teams in the MAC, and they do this really weird thing after this kind of like gauntlet stretch where it like starts with Akron. They go like top tier, bottom tier, top tier, bottom tier. It literally, or well, I guess kind of Ohio and Toledo break that up, but it's like it literally feels like every other game they're playing like a top tier team, and then they're playing somebody who like is going to be near the bottom at the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, it's a really tough stretch of games. You got Kent State, and they're coming off of a loss at home to Western Michigan, which, I mean, Miami beat Western Michigan by 20, should have been by like 30, but, they kind of took the foot off the gas. So Kent State's going to be looking for revenge. Then you play Bowling Green at home, and Bowling Green, they are such an annoying team because, like, whatever Miami does, I feel like Bowling Green just, like, matches really well, and maybe it's just because of, like, again, this team is different, right? So I'm saying everything I'm saying is taking it with a grain of salt because I'm using a team's past to kind of compare. But like Bowling Green's like that annoying little gnat that like you can't really like kill. Like even, no matter how many times you like clap it, you open your hands and then it just goes.
Still there.
It's still there, and you're like, all right, cool. Akron is Akron. I mean, Akron's always going to be tough, especially at Akron. And one thing I do want to mention about this game is that it's going to be the first weekend it'll be the first weekend that Miami students are back, but Akron's already been back, and Akron is doing this thing with their fans. It's called like the like zips, like the zip crazies or something like that. And I know I'm butchering the name, but it's essentially like if you are a part of this like fan club or like fan base, like you get all these rewards, and one of them is $2 beer. And like, if you're introducing $2 beer to college students on possibly the biggest game of the season for probably both squads, like that place is going to be raucous. And honestly, I wish Miami would do something similar, and maybe they'll do something similar in coming years with the new arena. But like, if they were able to do something like that and get like literally just pack the house for one Miami day, or even another home game versus like Toledo or something like that, like to be able to do that would be such a huge boost for this team. So, Akron's going to be really tough because it's Akron, it's Coach Steele's brother, there's all those factors. Akron lost at Miami last year on a buzzer beater from Darwishi Hunter. So like, Akron's always so good. And then, you go Eastern Michigan, then it's Ohio. And Battle of the Bricks, it's at home, it's our alumni day, it's Wally Day, it's One Miami Day, it's all this stuff. And then it's like, okay, cool, we go play Central Michigan. And then we have the Sun Belt tournament against Troy. And look, if they lose that game, they lose that game. I don't really care. I care about the MAC right now. Yeah. And then it's like, boom, Tuesday night in Millette Hall, Toledo, let's do this. And you're like, God, man. And then it's Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, and then it's boom, Kent State again. You're just like, can we catch a break? And then it's Northern Illinois, and then boom, you're at Ohio, and then Buffalo, and then you're at Buffalo, and then you come home for Ball State, and it's like, dude.
Gauntlet. The MAC's a gauntlet. It was rough calculations here. I might have missed a game or two. I was trying to do it quick, but when Miami played these 4 teams last year that I talked about, Kent State, Bowling Green, Akron, and Ohio, they went 4-6. So they were able to compete with these guys, but they also struggled in some of these games. I distinctly remember they lost to Bowling Green by, I think, 5 last year, and that was a pretty tough game. I remember Steele being pretty upset about that game. If you can go, obviously we're hoping for 4-0, 3-1, but even if you split and go 2-2 in that stretch of games, I think that sets you up to be really strong in the MAC the rest of the way, because these are probably the toughest opponents you haven't faced a competition this good in your conference yet. So this is going to be like kind of trial by fire for this team to like have that the added allure that this is a conference game. This is a game you kind of need to win to stay in contention for the regular season title. So I think that added pressure might lead to, I don't want to say a drop in performance, but maybe a couple like mental errors that wouldn't have happened in some of these earlier games. And they had obviously the non-conference experience that they played will set them up for these kind of pressure-packed environments. Going to places like Michigan and Indiana, those are probably the toughest place they're going to play all year. So they are set up to compete in these games. But I do think that the added pressure of like, okay, wait, we're competing for this thing. We're in here now. Like, and I don't like teams like Akron and Ohio. They've been in those situations. They've seen what it's like to play in those games. And Miami, frankly, hasn't. And a lot of their guys are super young and haven't played at that level of competing for a regular season title yet. So I would be thrilled if this team goes 2-2 through this stretch.
Yeah, I mean, the game that you need to win, obviously, is Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
So if they're 1-3, obviously you don't want them to be 1-3, but like again, I don't want to say you can chalk it up as a win, but like Eastern Michigan should be a win, and we've seen that they're like able to handle the teams that are kind of below their weight class. They beat Kent State last year, and Kent State is going to have a little bit more motivation because guess who? I think he's still there. But guess who's there? Our old friend Morgan Safford.
Oh yeah,
Miami's team, not last year but 2 years ago. And I'm checking Kent State's roster right now. I mean, Safford kind of had an unceremonious exit from the team. Yep, there he is. Morgan.
Bring it nicely.
Yeah, Morgan Safford, graduate student. Yeah, kind of had an unceremonious end to the to Miami or to his Miami tenure. He is averaging. It looks like he might be injured, but he is averaging 10 points a game, which is about. It's lower than what he was at Miami. But we obviously know he's still a very versatile scorer. So he may not play against Kent State because he hasn't, or against Miami because he hasn't played since December. But hey, if they get him back, like he's going to be gunning for Miami.
Yeah.
So, but I like our odds against Kent State. Bowling Green again, always really tough, but I do like our odds against Bowling Green. I think Bowling Green is probably just like a step slower than Miami. Akron's going to be the toss-up. Akron has a ton of transfers that they brought in, a ton of high-level talent. Especially after losing Enrique Freeman to the NBA. So I think if I'm being optimistic, it's 3-1. If I'm being kind of more pessimistic, it's probably 2-2.
Yeah, I agree. I would be happy with 2-2. I'd be thrilled with 2-2.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to pivot before we run out of time and talk about some other big news we talked about briefly last week about the future of the Redhawks home, because Millett, to put it nicely, is not the nicest arena in the world. I think it's just too big. I think it's the main issue. Like facilities wise, we've seen a lot worse. There's a lot worse out there in college basketball, but it's frankly just too big. It's a tough place to get any kind of atmosphere going just because of how cavernous it feels when it's not completely full. Like obviously for like graduations and stuff, it's a pretty cool environment to see that place packed to the brim. For basketball games, that hasn't really happened since sophomore year against Cincinnati. So we're going to talk about what the future holds for this team. I posted a video on Twitter of during the Western Michigan game, Kyle Waltz, one of Miami's recruits, was introduced to the crowd. And somehow this post went pretty viral on Twitter. I think I had like 28,000 views, which is the most I've ever had. Yeah, here it is. So Waltz gets introduced. He walks out in front of the crowd. They play a highlight reel. And for some reason, all of the comments were just like, wow, that stadium just needs more atmosphere, or like Millett needs to be improved. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Ignore Michael O'Connor's, but please build a new arena and get peeps there. What does Miami do? Where does Miami put a new arena if they're going to put a new arena
in? So there's like the couple of reports that have come out. First of all, the new arena is happening. It's probably not going to be done until we're like well into our careers, knock on wood.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would assume probably, probably the 28, 29, 29, 30 season. So like Millett isn't going anywhere anytime soon unless unless they like put their foot on the gas and say like we're
on it. Yeah,
exactly like stop all of their projects. Let's do this, which I don't think is going to happen because Bachelor Hall is still being renovated and they got all this other crap that they got to do for lack of a better term.
There's always construction in this town. There's always something being redone or rebuilt. So what's on the back burner, but I think there's 2 sites I've seen. The one, I'll see if I can pull up a map real quick. The one I've seen is kind of over by Slant Walk, like by High Street. Give me 2 seconds here. I'll screen.
While you're pulling that up, the Miami Student has a great article on this by Keith Mbabu. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. But they said in the article that there are 9 sites are being chosen for consideration. 9 sites were chosen for consideration, and that was in November. In December, it says that the Board of Trustees resolution moves forward with the new arena. It'll cost anywhere from $100 million to $200 million. The main thing is that they want to move it closer to Central Campus, and they don't think the $80 million worth of renovations at Millette would be the smartest thing to do. So they are just like, let's just build a new one. And it will be interesting to see what they do with Millette. They'll probably just tear it down and turn it into more parking because that's what Miami needs. They need a crap ton of more parking.
Yeah.
It says that there's the goal of making a site recommendation to President Crawford by early 2025. It is early 2025, and that is the last report in December. But yeah, I mean, if you're able to pull up the map,
I have a map here. So I don't know if they can see my cursor, but oh yeah, you can. So the original site, I believe, is supposed to be like over here. Is that what the Miami Student article said? It's going to be Slant Walk, which is this path here, which would be
they said close to Slant Walk. Yeah.
So I mean, this is all green space right here. I assume it would be kind of in this region here, if they were going to do it, which would be great because High Street is right there. It's right in this area is where most of Miami's social activity happens off campus. You put an arena there that's in between student dorms and uptown. Suddenly that becomes a pretty interesting environment. That would definitely increase attendance just because of how close it is. In tandem, you can see Millette's all the way over here, which for college students, that's a far walk. That's a 20-minute walk from the dorms, which are all the way down here. So definitely moving the stadium closer to campus and closer to uptown, I think would definitely increase attendance. I don't think that's the only thing they need to do. I think that they need to make it smaller and more of a compact environment to try and keep some atmosphere in. Obviously, it's never going to live up to the expectations of like a Cameron indoor, but that's the kind of environment I'm hoping that they kind of go to and kind of are inspired by, where you have this compact environment where everyone's close to the floor.
Yeah. Actually, would you mind pulling up the map again?
Yeah.
So there are 2 things that I know they're considering. One, they want it to be more like Goggin, where like everybody knows Goggin's a small arena.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of that is to make it feel more full, to make it feel more full, to make it have a better atmosphere, right? So I think they want to do something like that. The one issue I think of putting it on Slant Walk, there's not a ton of space on Slant Walk, and if you are like thinking about parking, like where does the parking go, right? Because like you're gonna have to put parking somewhere, and the way that Miami is so restrictive on their parking, is it just gonna be like, oh, go park at Millette and then go walk, 10 minutes to Slant or 5 minutes to Slant Walk? Like, unfortunately, the way Miami is like built right now is like Slant Walk is not the best spot for it, because you have King Library, which is a ton of space. You have Hall Auditorium. If you're just looking at like this little, or like the little corner top left, right? Like that is not enough space for an arena.
It would probably have to be like kind of these 2 squares here, like kind of backing up into Bell Tower. And even that's like a small arena. That would be a tiny, tiny arena. And there would, as you said, there would be nowhere to park. Like that's issue number one. I'm seeing issue number two is that this is all like academic buildings. And like
and
I'm not
you
sure,
can't get rid of them.
and I'm not sure if Miami, especially like the environment that President Crawford's been kind of hoping to instill in the university, I'm not sure how thrilled he would be by adding what we're hoping to be a pretty rowdy basketball arena kind of in the center of where all of academia is happening in Oxford. So I'm not sure that this is the best site for it. I think anywhere close to Uptown would be ideal. So it's kind of among people. I'm not totally realized I just almost doxed myself there. But even if you throw it up here, like kind of by the basketball arena or the baseball stadium, I'm not sure how much space there is over there. I'm not sure how you'd fit it over there, but it's close enough where it's closer than where we're currently at.
Yeah, I mean, if actually let's play a little game. Let's go kind of around Hayden Park and see like what is around there, and like how much space there is.
So this is all parking. This is a parking garage.
And then there's another parking garage to the right.
I think this is just like a parking lot.
Oh yeah, the parking lot for the Miami Inn, which is right there.
The Miami Inn, which I mean, I'm not even sure that thing's still in use anymore. I think like the fence for the baseball stadium is like here.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, because it backs up into like Markham and this building here.
Yeah.
It backs right up to Miami Inn.
I mean, they don't use the Markham Hotel anymore. Which again, I mean, here's the issue. We're getting really close to like Millette territory. Like if you zoom out a little bit, like
we're basically at Millette.
You're basically at Millette. You're moving it maybe 20 feet, not 20 feet, but like you're moving it maybe like a 5-minute walk closer, because like Hayden Park is still kind of out of the way for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: if you put it behind Farmer, if like you get rid of the Markham because they're not using the Markham anymore, they want to build a new hotel anyways. If you kind of make it by Markham and like it's right behind the Farmer School of Business, I mean, shit. I mean, excuse my language, but like Miami's going to eat that up, right? They're going to be like, oh my gosh, our greatest building, Farm School of Business, is right next to our basketball arena. You know how many people we're going to get? The only other place I see them putting it, unfortunately, is Cook Field. They've talked about building the hotel there, but you then get into the issue of like, okay, where now do you put the intramurals? Like, because then it's like, okay, maybe you just open up Jaeger to the intramurals, and you don't want that. You're not really going to want that.
Do not want that. The map also doesn't show, because you could also say like, why don't you put it over here where there's all this green space? This is a very sharp drop off, like along this line. This is basically a cliff.
Yeah.
Where you can't really put anything east of Markham, because this is all like a cliff. This is all a giant cliff back here. And this is like basically a 20-foot drop that's there. It's pathed and like it's a really cool like running and walking area, but you can't build on it. There's nothing there to build on. So the only other place that I think would maybe work is like down here by like the art museum, if they clear out this area, because there's currently like nothing back here. Like it's kind of just woods. But then you run into the same issue we have before of it's far from everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hilly area anyways. Like back there, I lived like in Peabody my freshman year. Just to get uptown was a half-hour walk. Like,
yeah, I was in Havinghurst, which is all the way over here, which is a little closer, but still not close.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a 20-minute walk still. So it's tough. I mean, there's not a ton of great places to put it, because the whole thing is
like where the field is.
Well, that's gonna be that new like transport station. And that's also not central.
It's not central, but it's closer. Like,
I mean, you could maybe reopen Chestnut Fields for like
intramurals, like redo that
for intramurals, but then you'd have to like make sure that you get buses to like bus people over there.
I mean, they have buses. It's obviously they're not a ton of students utilize them, but they do have a system that runs over there.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really fit it over here. There's nowhere you can.
They're also building a hotel behind Millette too. Like they're building like a Holiday Inn. Why at this point are you deciding to move it when you have like a brand new hotel going on?
Yeah, I think that's more for like the parents of students and there's just not any space to put anything else in Uptown right now. Like ideally you'd want it somewhere in this Uptown area. So that's why this spot makes so much sense, but there's just simply not enough space. And I think parking would turn into even more of a nightmare than it already is. So you'd have to basically have to do a shuttle system to get to that arena from the Millette parking lot or the Jaeger parking lot.
And I mean, maybe that's what they end up doing, right? Like maybe they just say you have to park there and we'll shuttle you to Central Campus.
What would be interesting is if, again, big if here, and then we'll get out of here. If this arena does happen, we haven't talked about this yet, but this stretch of Talawanda that would be kind of the path from the parking lot to the arena is one of 2 Greek rows. These are all Greek houses. So that would create an interesting, we're talking about extracurriculars here. We're talking about social life, but if they did some kind of like tailgate stretch through here for fans walking to the game, that could be cool. That could be something if they get people on board with it. Obviously, Miami's not got the greatest relationship with Greek life, but they did it for football last year for a couple games.
They did it for football this year, yeah.
They did it for a couple games for football this year. Why not turn this stretch on game nights into basically a block party and have these fans walk through a cool environment on their way to the arena?
Put us on the planning committee. I've heard enough. Put us on the planning committee.
I mean, all of these great ideas were given for free right now. I mean, seriously.
I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, I know we're kind of out of time here, but the one thing we did briefly talk about is like, what are some other things you'd want to see at the new arena this year when it comes up? I'll make this quick, but the couple things I want to see us have like a name that isn't after like a president of Miami. I'd rather see it be like the Wayne Embry Arena or the Charlie Coles Arena, and then even have like a name on the floor, like Wally Zerbiak floor, Ron Harper floor. Maybe have like a sponsor on the floor, like get Kroger to like call it like Kroger floor or whatever it is. I think that'd be cool. And then of course the 3 names that I just mentioned, they all get statues, right? You put Wayne Embry at north entrance, you put Wally Zerbiak at the west, you put Ron Harper at the east, you put Charlie Coles at the south, or however you want to do it. All those guys deserve statues. All of those guys have been so influential for Miami sports and Miami basketball that they all deserve statues.
100%. And I think if we're going to put our conspiracy hats on for a second here, but February 1st, which is conspicuously close to this anticipated announcement of the new arena, is also Wally Zerbiak Day. Wally Day, according to the Miami schedule. Wally Day and Carnival on the Concourse. We don't know what Wally Day means. I assume that means Wally Zerbiak Day. Could be wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there's going to be some big announcement with Zerbiak at some point during that day. I have no idea what it's going to be. I have no sources here. This is purely guesswork. But I think he's going to have a huge role in whatever is next for Miami basketball in terms of their home.
I would say he either is getting a statue, which it'd be fine with me. He wouldn't be the first guy I'd go to, or he'd probably be the second guy, and then do Coles, Zerbiak, then Harper.
Yeah.
Or he's like pledging a ton of money to this new arena, maybe like a $5 million donation because he's got that just sitting in his back pocket. And then they'll probably just like name the stadium after him. So like it'll be called Zerbiak Stadium. Ooh, that'd be cool. Zerbiak Stadium.
That's got a nice ring to it.
Or call it Wally's World.
That'd be a sick nickname. That would get people in the arena.
Yeah, Zerbiak Stadium. Wally's World at Zerbiak Stadium.
There you go.
So yeah, we'll see what happens. We're both going to be at Wally Day. I'll be sidelining for ESPN Plus. Jack will be covering for Riverfront, of course. So we'll both be there, bringing you all the breaking news that we are anticipating. But who knows?
We'll be there live. We'll get on out of here because I know we've gone over our time. But one other thing I want to briefly talk about is there's been talks about us adding a video aspect to our coverage from basketball games in the future. We're still in the logistics phase of that. We're still in the planning phase, seeing how that would work, what kind of equipment I'd need to acquire to make that happen on a daily basis. But keep an eye out for that in the future. That might be something we test run in the next couple of weeks, doing some kind of live coverage from games after games. If that's something you guys want, shoot us a message on social media. Our handles are the same as they always are. I'm not sure why they're not showing right now, but yeah. Ted, anything else to add before we get on out of here?
No, just we probably won't be here next week. That's kind of why we're going a little bit long. I'll be traveling to get back to Ohio, but we probably won't be here this week, or next week. But the week after, we'll be back, and we'll be back to our regular Thursday recording schedules.
Yeah, I think we're gonna take a break next week to kind of get ready for the new school year, both in grad school. So that's always kind of an experience, and there isn't a ton for us to talk about that we haven't already covered. So we're going to take a little hiatus, then jump right back in the week after that in 2 weeks' time. But in the meantime, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Red Brick Recap, episode number 18. We will see you all in 2 weeks in the same bad time, same bad channel. In the meantime, enjoy yourselves. Have a good start to your new year, and we'll see you then.